BioWare just dropped the gameplay reveal trailer for Dragon Age the Veilguard, so let's get into all the gameplay details. I'll get more into my personal opinion on everything presented to us later on in the video, chapter markers below. Gameplay starts us off in the city of Minrathous, the capital city of the Tevinter Imperium. This is the furthest location to the north on the continent of Thedas that Dragon Age players have ever been, and if you're wondering why it looks so technologically savvy, well, that's because Tevinter is a magocratic nation, and mages get to do some crazy stuff here. The player character is this guy, known as Rook in the game, and your Rook will be customizable. There's 4 races to choose from: human, elf, dwarf, and Kunari. 3 classes, warrior, mage, and rogue, but don't worry, these classes will form into more advanced subclasses, likely offering specializations in things such as archery or two-handed warrior, etc. There's also 7 factions to choose from, and I will do a deeper dive into this in the future. Your faction choice is said to unlock different narratives, dialogue, and gameplay interaction. First thing you may notice is that the game definitely has a darker tone and vibe than the reveal trailer. Although it's not as realistic as some may hope, it does have great lighting, nice shadows, and overall I'd say it looks good. Loving the look of the outdoor tavern right here, and the little bit of foliage that we get to see in the city itself looks great. It's definitely a bit on the modern, generic side of the visual spectrum, I would say, but personally, I can get used to it. The player character walks down the staircase alongside Varric, who first made an appearance in Dragon Age 2. And you'll notice an X to interact pops up right here, and it looks like you're able to give some coins to this beggar if you so choose. The player's current quest objective is showing on the top right of the screen, and it's called The End of the Beginning. Find Nev Gallus, and with our first objective being to get Harding, a character from Dragon Age Inquisition. Varric says that we have to stop Solas, and as the game progresses, we learn that Solas is about to start a big ritual to tear down the Veil, and he actually starts the ritual just moments later, which is when demons start dropping into the city. Rook and Varric then pick up the pace a bit, and you may notice that the game has a very linear action-adventure feel to it right now, but do keep in mind that this is the first chapter, a prologue of sorts, I guess you could say, and Inquisition had a very similar start before it opened right up. Now, we do actually have some info from BioWare on this, though, from Dragon Age's director. Yeah, so it's a mission-based game. Everything is hand-touched, handcrafted, very highly curated. We believe that's how we get the best narrative experience, the best moment-to-moment experience. However, along the way, these levels that we go to do open up. Some of them have more exploration than others. Alternate branching paths, mysteries, secrets, optional content you're going to find and solve. So it does open up, but it is a mission-based, highly curated game. So take that as you will, and of course set your expectations accordingly. In the gameplay, there were plenty of icons on the screen pointing the player in the right direction. I'm not sure if this will be something that you can toggle on and off or not, nor am I sure how it will work outside of this prologue chapter of the game, but it is something to note. Right here, the player needs to destroy scaffolding, which lights up in gold, and when climbing on objects to get to your objective, the game seems to at times give you these painted ledges. When Rook and Varric finally reach Scout Harding, who is of course going to help us find Nev and attempt to stop Solas's ritual, this is when we get our first glimpse at the dialogue wheel. It seems like a pretty basic question here out of Harding, and I doubt any specific response in this particular example will result in anything meaningful, but I do want to note here that BioWare once again has players choose responses that might not always necessarily represent exactly what is said. The player character chooses "in a hurry," but the player character's voice responds with
"We're good, but we need to move."
Now that particular example works out just fine, and maybe most of the game will be perfectly fine, but I do want to just point out that BioWare has been known for giving you dialogue responses that don't really directly correspond to what you actually say in the game. What might be most important to note here is that each response has an icon that represents the type of response that it is. Never better is a thumbs up, which in Inquisition equates to a pleased response. A little shaky is a head with exclamation points within it, which corresponds to a surprised response. And in a hurry is this tough-looking armored character staring at your soul, which in Inquisition represents a stoic response. There will be plenty of other types of responses in this game. Here's the iconography from Inquisition, and you notice that there are 8 notches in the dialogue wheel. Before we get into combat, let's continue on with dialogue. So later on in the trailer, when we meet the companion Nev, we get to see a dialogue response that represents a humorous response. And towards the end of the trailer, the player is presented with a choice between taking Harding or Nev with him, to which a text pops up above the dialogue wheel saying, "Choose wisely, your decisions will impact your companions." Some sort of approval system is making a return, and we got to see a little bit of it right here. In this particular example, Varric says to Rook, Solas needs someone to sell him another option to help him justify changing his mind. and Rook can respond with "this is a mistake" or "you can do it," and Rook chooses "this is a mistake," which leads to Nev's disapproval and Harding's approval. Back to the previous example, when choosing Harding, Harding greatly approves. Also note that when selecting over Nev and Harding, the game gives a little extra context above the wheel, stating that both Harding and Nev will follow you into great danger. This implies that different companions have different personalities and combat traits. There was also plenty of party banter in the gameplay outside of the dialogue wheel and cutscenes, which is always nice to see.
Thought the demons were bad back in Minrathous.
The Fade's a mess this close to the ritual. No telling what could come through.
Our first combat encounter here is pretty basic, of course, as this is the start of the game. We have our character's health bar in the bottom left, and to the right of that we can see the player's health potions. And a few minutes later we actually get to watch Rook using a health potion, to which he then is able to get a potion back by attacking this green vase. Do note though that your D-pad, if you're playing on controller, should give you access to other items that you have slotted, I guess you could say, when you obtain them. In the middle of the screen we can see the amount of arrows that this character has. Clearly Rook is playing as the rogue class, but you'll notice that when Rook fires off an arrow there is a brief charge up time, which I'm assuming allows for more damage the longer the charge. And after Rook fires the arrow, there is a 6 to 8 second cooldown, to which that arrow then becomes available again. So it looks like unlimited arrows, but you can only rapidly shoot so many of them without having to wait for a cooldown. Rook, however, does do most of this battle with his dual daggers, and you'll of course notice a lock-on target system, but Rook's bow attacks do have this free aim system that likely comes with some aim assist. After the encounter is over, Rook receives 10 XP, and the XP bar that pops up goes up a smidge. So there's definitely some sort of leveling system, as expected of course. In the following encounter, we watch Rook perform some sort of deflect on an opponent's magical ranged attack. But there's no button icon that pops up or anything there, which I actually do appreciate. I doubt that the timing will be that hard though. And do note that at least for this particular attack from these demons, you the player are able to see that you're being targeted from a ranged attack. One thing many Dragon Age fans may be asking though is, do we get to control other party members, like actually switch to their character? Well, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that, at least up to this point, but we will be able to do a few things, such as control what abilities they use at times through the game's combat wheel, which pauses the game. Do note that the total party size has been downsized to a party of 3 versus 4 from the previous games. BioWare says that the combat wheel will allow you to pause the action, issue commands to your followers, use abilities, and unleash devastating combos. At this point in the game though, the directing your companions is not available to the player, so we'll have to wait and see what that's all about. Switching over to a screenshot that was shared to us by Michael Gamble, the executive producer, we can see a much more filled out combat wheel here, as he's using a higher level character, and the abilities on the bottom of the wheel are the player character's abilities. On the left side of the wheel you can see a picture of Harding with 3 available abilities, and on the right side Balara with her 3 abilities. The game also displays when combo opportunities are possible. As you can see, one of Rook's abilities combos with one of Harding's abilities here. The combat wheel also appears to allow you to see a target's vulnerabilities and resistances if they have any. You can also navigate, change target, select, close, and cancel. If you're wondering if characters only have 3 abilities each, well, Michael says on Twitter, nope, tons, just swapping in 3 on the wheel. And I want everyone also to take note that there's 2 diamonds showing up on each ability arc. That makes me wonder if we can switch to a separate arc of abilities. I'm not sure. Also note that you do not need to be in the wheel to use abilities. This is just if you want to do this tactical pause. The combat wheel also gives you a description of the abilities that you have on the wheel. Static Strike here deals 121 lightning damage, and it costs 1 circle on this character's rogue-specific momentum bar is what they're calling it. Other classes will have their own special resource bar. If you look closely, when Rook uses Static Strike, it uses up 1 bar, and then as Rook attacks opponents, that bar actually starts to fill back up. It's also important to note that when Rook takes damage, it seems to take a little chunk off the bar as well. So the game is trying to incentivize you to not only deal damage and perhaps be aggressive at times, but also avoid damage when possible, at least when playing as the rogue class specifically. During the Pride Demon encounter, I want to point out that I noticed the player character getting knocked down, but a button prompt pops up to allow for a quick recovery. I'm not sure if this is specific to the rogue class or not. This rogue also has a dash, and I saw what appears to be a double jump, which can turn into an attack. It'll be interesting to see how the other classes operate with their more basic maneuvers. Around 10 minutes into the trailer, BioWare skips some time for us to leave some of the gameplay unknown, I'm assuming. And you discover Solas's hideout in an Alluvian gate, the portal he's used to escape the city of Minrathous, and this is when we change locations to the Arlathan Forest. Taking a quick look at the map of Thedas, and we were just here in the city of Minrathous. Now we are here in the Arlathan Forest in northern Antiva. The game still keeps a rather dark and bleak atmosphere at this point in time, despite us being in this forest, but I'm sure that much of this has to deal with, Solas currently tearing the veil, and at some points I'm sure that many of the game's locations will brighten right up. At the end of the trailer, Varric attempts to talk down Solas, while the player character and their chosen comrade work to hold off demons and knock over elven statues of the old gods to disrupt the ritual. Not sure that worked though, as we see the veil start to open right up, with two mysterious characters, one on each side of Solas, appearing to be two of the elven gods. And note that if you don't know who Solas is, well, he's also the dreadwolf, an ancient being and a member of the elven pantheon of gods. We don't need to get into too many story details in this particular video, as we're more so focused on gameplay here. And to end the video, here's my thoughts and my feelings on the overall trailer. I think it's clear as day that Dragon Age continues to become more and more streamlined. The franchise continues to move away from old school RPG fans and more into a wider audience, I guess you could say. That can be a good or bad thing depending on personal preference. I have personally already went through the grieving stages of expecting some RPG with crazy, deep, fairly complex systems, old school RPG mechanics, etc. And I'm now looking at this game from a different perspective. Now, for what it's aiming to do, I think it's doing a really good job. It looks good, it looks fun, it looks smooth. And if they can get the story down and actually come through with their claim of having branching narratives and reactivity, I think it can be a really fun game. The Dragon Age franchise has always thrived on world building and companions and their personalities, and if BioWare can add on to that in a quality way, I will be very excited to see where this game takes us. If those two categories, companions and the world building and the story, if those are checked off and they do it in a good way, I can kind of overlook the more streamlined nature of the rest of the game and still be able to immerse myself in this world. I'm very excited to see what happens with Solas, of course, and Varric, etc. So overall, it was a bit of a relief seeing this gameplay trailer compared to the reveal trailer, but I still certainly understand a lot of the concerns and maybe even complaints from more old school Dragon Age fans, or people that are more fans of a little bit more hardcore RPGs, I guess you could say, because this game is giving off a bit of an action-adventure vibe, even though I think it will have many RPG mechanics. So if you're someone that really loves this game no matter what, and you're just loving it and you just can't wait to jump back in, just try to have some understanding towards the folks that feel this way, because it is more streamlined, and that really can have a negative effect on some RPG lovers' experience. And although the gameplay looks much better than the reveal trailer, it's still a bit cartoony. Like, look at the face of this character right here. A lot of people are just not going to like that, and that's fair. In the same sentence, let me also say that those of you out there that are really just pissed off, let people enjoy the game too. If there's people that are loving everything that they see and they can't wait to jump in and they just love everything about it, let them do that. Let them have their moment. Let them enjoy their game. And, sometimes you just have to go through a grieving period and move on. It is what it is. Put your money where your mouth is and don't buy games that you don't think are good. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I will continue to cover this game for the foreseeable future. There is a Discord link below if you want to join in on some Dragon Age discussions. I'll catch you all on the next one.